everybody, thank you so much for clicking on this video. So we are doing things a little differently today, meaning I have never made a video like this before, and I'm gonna be fixing your form on exercises. I recently asked you on Instagram and on TikTok and in my weekly newsletter to shoot me a video of any exercise that you need help with, and I will give you some actual tips. So we're gonna be looking at all of them today. I think we have 7 people who were brave enough to submit. I totally understand it is scary, like putting yourself on the internet. So I will say right now, no negative comments toward any of these people in the comments. We will all be leading with positivity today and gratefulness that these 7 people decided to help make this video happen. So without further ado, let's jump on in. Okay, first up, we have Daniel. So Daniel is showing us a dumbbell squat. I asked people to note if they found something particularly challenging about the exercise. Daniel said, sometimes I just go over my toes and I lost the balance when I'm going up, and you can also hear my knees cracking, LOL. Let me first say before we even look at this, knees cracking is totally normal as long as there's no pain associated with it. If you do have pain associated with it, or if you just are bothered by it, go to a physical therapist. They'll be able to figure out what's going on. Is it a good range of motion, or are my legs too far apart? Let's take a look. We love 2 angles. Thank you, Daniel. Good. All right, to adjust your concern right off the top, let's look at his stance. So we have a pretty wide stance here and toes externally rotated. I don't necessarily have an issue with this, but I would challenge you to see what would happen if you brought your feet a little closer together and did a little less turnout. A lot of times when we need to stand wider and need to stand with the toes turned out, it's due to some type of limitation, either in the pelvis or the femur. So I would honestly, just as a coach, be curious to see what happened if you change your stance. You have amazing range of motion, by the way. We're getting nitpicky right here, right? Like, this is not a squat where I'd be like, oh gosh, let's remove the weight, let's stop. I am getting nitpicky. So really, really good. I love that you have a nice upright torso. Something that I did notice, so see when we go down, we've got like a little bounce at the bottom of our squat. I would recommend slowing down and reducing that little It's not only gonna reduce your risk of injury, but it's also gonna make you a lot stronger and able to lift more weight. Because when you reduce that little that momentum at the bottom, you're actually utilizing a lot more of your core, a lot more of your pelvic floor. And these are the things that you want really strong and activated while you're doing squats so that you can load it up even heavier. Only other thing I'm seeing, if we look right here, as we come up to the top, you're gonna see a push forward of the hips. Right there. So it's harder to see. Let's see if we do it from the side. Oh, right there. So see how we're in like a C curve now. What we want instead is to end in that neutral alignment. So all of our joints, shoulders, ribs, hips, knees, ankles stacked in one line. Again, the same premise for that is your core. We're going to keep that core tension so we can lift heavier, and it's just gonna be a safer position. But honestly, Daniel, these look fantastic. I would say play with your stance if you'd like to. Watch your momentum on the way down. And instead of thinking of pushing the hips forward on the way up, I like to think of pushing the floor straight down instead. But brava, so strong. All right, let's move to our next one. We have Justina. Justina is also doing a squat. I feel it mostly in my knees, and my knees have been hurting on and off for the past couple of months. Yeah, within a squat, I wouldn't say we ever want to feel something in a joint, really in any exercise. Meaning if that's where we feel the work of the movement, we're probably not loading the muscles as much as we can around the joint. And then having knee pain, like I said, pain is never normal. So if you are having pain in an exercise, the first thing we want to do is check our form. And then the next thing we want to do if our form is immaculate is to go see a professional. That is not me. I'm not a pain specialist. That is a physical therapist. Any other notes or questions? I wear a leg sleeve brace thing some days when I'm feeling pain in my knee. Should I wear it while exercising too? Honestly, it can't hurt as long as I'm assuming it's like a compression sleeve, and essentially a compressed muscle or joint is going to A, heal faster if there is soft tissue damage, but B, if it gives you a little extra support, I don't think that's a bad thing. But again, that's not really a fix. It's kind of like a Band-Aid on a bigger problem. So we'll look at our form, we'll try and fine tune it a little bit, but even if you make these corrections and your form is like absolutely perfect and you're still feeling pain, I would recommend going to see a physical therapist. Let's take a look. First of all, that color is stunning on you. We love 3 angles, thank you. Okay, first of all, the squat itself, again, just like Daniel, I would never look at this and be like, whoa, it's unsafe, drop the weight. Like, you're doing a great job. Since you're having knee pain, a lot of times that actually is not necessarily where the symptoms lie. A lot of times it's either gonna be found down at the ankle or up at the hips. We wanna look at the joints around it. First thing that I'm noticing, if we look down at your feet, I love that you're barefoot, by the way. You can see, do it again, our toes kind of lift up. And it's slight. A few of the reps it's bigger than others. I think this one, there was more of a toe lift. Yeah. So what that's telling me is that there's some kind of instability in the lower extremities, whether it is a weakness in our stabilizers, whether it is a weakness in the bottom of the foot. So the first thing that I would recommend is thinking about your foot like a tripod. A lot of times we're told to push through the heel, drive through the heel, but we actually want to think of driving through the big toe, the pinky toe, and the heel in a tripod or triangle stance. So I would just cue you to do that first and see if that actually just helps fix the issue. I would also be really interested. So you can see that we are taking a pretty big forward lean. So I would call this more of a hingy squat. I'd be really curious to know if you feel like you can't go farther because of your hips or because of your ankles. I'm gonna say we have a pretty big amount of hip flexion here. I would say it is probably an ankle mobility issue. See how little dorsiflexion or I guess how big this angle is down at the ankle bone? So if I had to guess, I would say we probably have a little bit of instability in our lower body stabilizers, which could potentially be part of our knee pain, and limited dorsiflexion down here. Again, I am guessing, I am not prescribing, but I also saw something from the front. Watch the knees. See, we're just a little like baby deer-ish. That would be the biggest thing that I would recommend working on. Let's talk about what I would do. All right, so I'm gonna give you 3 different drills to try. All of these are kind of targeting different things, so let's talk about it. First one is a loaded beast. This is a great exercise to not only bring in a little bit more core connection, but also help to lengthen the fibers on the backside of the body, including the pelvic floor. A lot of times when people have trouble keeping an upright position, it can be linked to tighter muscles in the pelvic floor that aren't able to release. So let's work through this. We're gonna bring hands underneath the armpits, screw the arms into the floor. I'm actually gonna bring my knees a little bit behind my hips just so I have more range of motion, and then tuck the hips under. You should already be able to feel your core here. From here, lift the knees up. We're gonna take a big inhale, sit the booty back toward the heels, exhale, bring it forward. As we go back, what we don't want is to tuck, okay? So think of shining your butthole to the back wall. I always like to say, imagine you're my cat Zoe, putting your butthole in my face every single morning. So again, ideally, we are feeling a lot of core connection. We're just helping to lengthen those fibers on the backside of the body. Next thing to try is a lateral hip shift. This can be a little tricky. There's a lot of different ways to do this. My favorite is standing though. So I'm gonna take one leg in front, opposite leg in a kickstand behind me. We send the hips back into a hinge, and now I wanna think of sitting and rotating into this front hip. So I'm creating more space through my hip capsule. So big inhale, exhale, sit into that hip. So it should feel like an interesting stretch. If I do this to the side, so this is my hinge. I'm gonna slightly rotate my torso, sit into this hip. And I like to place my hand here so I can literally feel my weight going into that hip. So I would do like 5 or 6 breaths on each side. See what that does to your squat. Instead of solely thinking of like, before my squat, I have to do my glute bridges and I have to do some burpees and I have to walk on the treadmill beforehand. I want you to think instead of creating space within these joints so your body has more range of motion to move. Last thing I want you to try is elevating your heels. Again, it looks like, but it might not be, a ankle mobility issue. And honestly, a lot of people just do squat better with the heels elevated. So I want to see if this even helps you. So you can grab a yoga block. This might be too high. You can grab like a small plate or something, not like a dinnerware plate, like a lifting plate. Anyway, I'm going to bring my arms out in front of me. Pull the ribs and the pelvis close together. Big inhale. See if you can keep your body upright. Exhale to stand. Inhale down, exhale up. So I want you to try those 3 things, see if any of them help, and report back. I didn't really think about the logistics of this video. I probably should have used 2 different cameras because this is gonna keep happening, but now we're committed. We have Vivian. Vivian is doing the kettlebell swing. I'm so excited. I actually just made a Instagram video talking about kettlebell swings. I am 2 weeks away from finishing my kettlebell cert. I will have a whole video coming about kettlebells, and I actually have a whole kettlebell program that I'm making for the Fit Club. Obviously very excited. What do you find most challenging about performing this exercise? Can't talk. Picking the correct weight. That can be tough. I typically start people around 20 pounds when they're learning to swing. The issue with picking something too light is that it's not gonna have enough weight for you to really like go for it, but it all kind of depends on your strength. I'd say for most people, somewhere between 20 to 30 pounds is a good place to learn how to swing. Any other notes or questions? My form was not good, the weight was too heavy, and my form suffered. Vivian, positive self-talk over here. This is for everybody. Whenever you do something, especially if it's newer to you or you're trying it for the first time, find your win before you find the negatives, right? Amazing. So the win that I want to give you right off the bat, and this is actually something I am always trying to improve upon because I'm typically really bad at it. You're actually really good at finding your full hip flexion or your hip drive back every single time. So really, really good work there. Definitely think that the weight was a little too heavy just because you did have, even though you had good power through the hips, we had a little bit of trouble getting that bell all the way up. You have pretty solid connection to the floor, which I really like. Honestly, I think, Vivian, it just comes down to like your setup and then some small things with the execution. So just trying to eliminate that lean back, grabbing something a little bit lighter so we can really lift it. Let's go through, we're gonna have a camera change angle again. Let's go through just the full setup for a kettlebell swing and how I would progress you to this full swing. Okay, first thing you should do is take your shoes off. I don't feel like doing that though, but you should do this with your shoes off because so much of this is going to be about your ground tension and connection to the floor. But I'm too lazy. So starting it up, we always want to start with the kettlebell on the floor for our swings, unless you're coming from another exercise. So we're going to start with our toes up against the bell. I'm going to take one foot, line it up, and now I'm going to open up to the side and the other side. Now I have my tripod position. From here, I want to get my core connected. So a lot of times we stand like this. I'm also guilty of that. So we'll take our ribs and our pelvis, exhale, bring them closer together, and you should feel that core tension, okay? Keeping that tension, we send the hips back, reach out for the bell. We're gonna tilt it toward us and drag it a little bit, imagining like we're squeezing oranges under the armpits. From here, see how my knees are kind of creating this positive shin angle? I wanna pull back a little bit more to get more of my hamstrings, all right? So that's our setup. This is the first step. I want you to start by holding this position for 15 to 20 seconds. Do a few sets of that before you even start your swings, and I just want you to feel how much tension you need through the hamstrings, through your core, and through your back. So just learn how to create tension. That is step number one. Step number two, once you're ready, is to learn how to hike. So your swing is only as good as your hike. This is actually something you do pretty well once you get into the movement, but let's see how we do right from this bottom, because that's the hardest part. So we reach out, find that tension. I'm gonna hike the bell underneath me and then land. Take a second. And land. The goal here is to keep your hips low. A lot of times as we swing, people start to straighten the legs, and then you've lost all of your power for your first swing. This is where your power comes from, okay? But if we lose that, where are we gonna go? Step number three is a dead stop swing. So, getting our setup nice and strong. We're gonna hike one swing and re-land. Okay, take a second. Hike and land. Let's do step number four, which is your continuous swings. So pull the ribs down, send the booty back, tilt the bell, pull the hips back, hike, push, hike, push, hike, push. So this is just where I want you to start. These first four steps, working on that swing, come back, send me another video, we'll talk about it. That was exhausting. Okay, all right, we got Olga, a back squat. What do you find most challenging about performing this exercise? This is the hardest exercise for me. I always struggle with depth and with the bar feeling too heavy on my back. I just wanna let you know before we start to talk about this, I actually do not coach back squats. And there's a few reasons for this. Number one, a lot of my clients have no interest in it. Number two, it doesn't really serve any of my clients' goals. And number three, I just don't find that the risk of loading weight directly onto the spine is worth the reward. I think there's a lot of other ways to get the benefits of a squat. So I don't do these. I know how to do them, but I don't do them in my practice and I don't do them with clients. That being said, let's look at it. Right off the bat, again, not anything where I would be like, oh God, like let's stop. Like this is all gonna be little technical fixes. So you'll see right off the bat, when we load that bar onto our back or under, we're starting already. Look at this cervical into thoracic flexion forward. So we're already starting in kind of a rounded position between our shoulders, our upper and mid back. When we're loading weight on the back, you want to think of breaking that bar apart. So opening up the chest, keeping your core tension. We don't want to end here, right? It's about finding that neutral position, but really create that tension. So I would even say, like, just in your warm up before this, empty the bar, put it on your back in that position, and just practice trying to break it in half. Good, so notice as we come up, instead of everything kind of lifting together, we're only bending the knees and then the hips start to extend. So knees and finally hips. So we're kind of coming up with like the middle of our back leading, where we want to think of the knees and hips kind of extending at the same time. So if we're here, it's the difference of getting down and then coming up versus everything bending, everything extending. We see the difference? I would try a few things. I would say number one, try lowering the weight down a little bit. Really get those squat mechanics of breaking the bar, creating tension, and moving our joints together as a unit before we start packing on the weight. Number two, I would actually slow down your descent a little bit, again, to make sure that you're keeping that tension. A lot of times we let gravity, let momentum do the work, bring us down, and then it's gonna be a lot harder to get up because we've lost all of that core tension. And number three, and just my opinion, I would try a front squat. A lot of this is very, very bent forward. I understand in a barbell back squat, especially, it's hard for me to see if you're like more of a higher or lower rack, but especially if it's a lower rack, to counterbalance that weight, we do have to lean forward. But I would be curious to see if your hip extension improves bringing that weight on the front. So try it. see what happens, or don't take any of this advice. But I would say, at least for the back squat, lower the weight, slow the descent. It's really honestly hard for me to see what's going on at like the foot ankle kind of area because we're far away and I think there's something blocking your feet. But you can kind of take all of the other advice from the other people and just like making sure you have a really nice solid ground tension with the floor. All right, moving along. We have Kate. Kate is also doing kettlebell swings. What do you find the most challenging about performing this exercise? Some strain in the lower back and how to correct form. How much to bend the knees versus swing backwards? So is it a hinge or is it a squat? It's a hinge. Let's watch the video. We'll talk a little bit more. Amazing. Right off the bat, something that I do love that Kate's doing, you're gonna see her keep this neutral spine the entire time. So she's not letting her back round at all. So that tells me that you have really strong core and lat connection in this. We've already gone through the setup. So obviously we're starting from kind of like a little hang position. So go back to this timestamp if you want to actually set up your kettlebell swing and then kind of progress it with each step. But let's go through some of the specifics in here of like troubleshooting how to get specific things stronger. First things first, I want you to take your shoes off, especially these have so much cushion on the bottom. It's like lifting on pillows, right? So you're gonna get a lot better ground connection. So once we actually start the swing, I want you to make sure you're fully straightening your legs. Right now, we're kind of not all the way straight. I guess it's more so from the hips. Yeah, so making sure we're fully exploding through those hips. And I think the only other thing is a timing issue. So right now you'll kind of see, we'll watch it again. It's kind of back, front, back, front, back, front, back, front. Whereas in a kettlebell swing, we actually want a little bit more of a delay. Let me show you that, and then I'm gonna show you a drill to help with your hip power. Someone didn't think this through, doo-dah, doo-dah. Okay, so let me show what you're doing with a lighter weight so I don't tweak my back. Because honestly, even though you have fantastic tension through your back, this is probably what's hurting it. What you're doing is using your arms to complete the movement. Okay, so see how my arms are doing the work there, right? Your arms should feel weightless at the top. Notice the timing of this swing. So see how it floats? I'm waiting until that bell is at my belly button to break at the hips. And up, and up, and up, and down. So instead of down, up, it should be down, up, down, up. And you can just practice this with your arms. So that timing is tricky. That's like a fine tuning. It takes time to get. In the meantime, I think the biggest drill that's gonna help you is understanding how to really load and explode from those hips. So I would actually just start with some two-hand cleans. So bringing the weight in between the feet, you would align the bell up with the ankles, pull the ribs down, reach down. You're gonna pull your hips down and back and then try to break the bar in half. From here, push the floor down, stand up fast, and then we can bring it back down. Again, and lower it down. And down. That's one of my favorite exercises. Very simple, just to understand. Loading those hips and then press the floor down, full extension, power, fast. Practice that. Go back to that swing progression from the first person who did them. And let me know how it goes. All right. Alicia. Alicia is a Fit Club member. We're looking at overhead pressing today. What do you find most challenging about performing this exercise? Trying to increase the weight and strength. Previous instruction from you has been if I feel my traps engaging and shoulders creeping up, probably lifting too heavy of weight. Also trying to do a straight line is difficult, but also could be because I was using too heavy of a weight. So essentially what we're talking about here is as Alicia presses up, sometimes her shoulders really elevate, which could potentially be because the weight is too heavy. That's kind of what we've talked about in the past. Oh, and then the straight line thing, I prefer to cue people pressing up and down rather than out to the side. I think the fastest point from A to B is a straight line. This is also like way harder on your shoulder. It's also probably telling me that you have some kind of limitation in your mobility at the shoulder. We'll talk about that later. My left side is my weaker side. When I watched the video, it looked like the left side might have been fatiguing, might have also just been the camera angle. Let's take a look. Oh, we love a puppy moment. I didn't notice the left side looking weaker. I want to look at one thing really quickly. Okay, I think we were just fatiguing. What I was looking for was are we getting full extension? At the top through the elbow, we are. I think just by the time we turned to the side or to the back, we were a little bit fatigued. But ideally, we'd want this bicep up by the ear a little bit more. Before we start that press, we want to look at our posture. See how we're a little rounded right here. I would want you to think of pulling the ribs down and the hips up. So just like we did with that swing, getting that core connection, because you'll see when we start to press, ribs flaring, chin coming forward, low back arch. So what we want it to look like, instead of here, stacking, we should be in a standing plank. So I actually don't think it's a weight issue. Like, you're able to get that weight up overhead. If anything, getting that trunk in that neutral position is actually going to help you be able to lift more. So I would first just have you try and do that, like try and correct this posture. A lot of times, if we are lacking overhead mobility, this posture happens because our body goes, I need to get this weight overhead. I don't have the mobility up here, whether it's in the clavicle, whether it's in the scapula, like wherever it might be. There's a lot going on up in here. I don't have that here. So I'm going to compensate down lower to make sure I have it. That was a great armpit shot. Woo! So I did already do a whole video about how to improve your overhead press. I want to give you a few other ideas of some ways to potentially, again, make more space through here so that you can actually maintain that nice stacked proper positioning. You will need a wall. Okay, so we're just gonna do like an overhead mobility assessment. You wanna take about a foot step away from the wall, little bend in the knees, tuck the hips so your low back, shoulder blades, back of your head are connected. From here, big inhale, exhale, reach those arms overhead. Can you keep those points of contact with the wall the entire time? That's the most important. If you're limited, I'm gonna give you a few drills to try. By the way, huge shout out to Sam Cha-Cha of Bell Mechanics. This is the course I'm taking. I did a whole week just on overhead mobility. And while I did do all of these drills in some way, shape, or form before, I'm literally pulling what she taught me and giving it to you. So everyone say thank you, Sam Cha-Cha. We're gonna start with some floor rainbows. I'm gonna take my top leg, bring it up in line with my hip, bottom leg is straight, place it onto a yoga block, a foam roller, whatever you got. So we're gonna take that top arm and draw your rainbow all the way around. If you get to a point where you'd have to lift to bring it over, that's the end of your range of motion. Come back. Ideally, what we're doing is coming all the way around, and then we come back. I want you to focus on keeping this knee right on top of the foam roller so we're not rolling back onto that hip. So I would do 3 to 5 reps on each side, and then the most important thing, retest on the wall in between each one, because if you do all of these and then retest, well, you don't know which one worked, right? So that's number one. The second one is one that actually always helps me. It is an anterior rib expansion. So we're trying to open up these front ribs, and really all it is a puppy pose. You can also do this with the hands elevated, but we're just gonna walk the hands out in front, forearms and forehead down, booty up to the ceiling. And in this position, really try to breathe into the front of your chest. Inhale, expand. Exhale, sink a little lower. So, again, the whole concept, can we just make some more space in here? And then the last one is a posterior rib expansion. So, forearms on the ground, we're gonna slide them into the knees, and we're gonna round that back and really close off the front of the chest, so we have to breathe into that back space. I feel so bad, I'm like right on my mic. Again, in between each one of these, we want to retest at the wall. It might not completely fix it, but a lot of times this isn't necessarily a strength issue, it's a mobility issue. And with mobility, creating more space for things to move is key. One other thing I want you to think about with that idea of space. Obviously, something we had talked about before was not elevating that shoulder up to the ear, but we also don't necessarily want to like completely depress it down, right? A little bit of lift is fine. If we're always super depressed, we're really just crushing this thoracic cavity. And again, more space is gonna give us more mobility and then more strength. Last one, and this one's actually from my friend Molly. So she just texted it to me. This was when like I had no submissions and she was like, do you want me to submit something? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, you're a good friend, thank you. So she's doing a clean into a rotational press. Okay, honestly, those looked really good. Honestly, the clean mechanics are the only thing that I see issue with. You have great overhead mobility, your press is really strong, you're rotating from the hip. So let's just break down this clean real quick.
It's the last angle change. It's the last.
Purse, we're losing it. Oh. So when you turn to the side, the first thing I noticed is that your kettlebell is out in front of you. We always want to make sure that bell is right underneath of us. So I want you to move the bell back so that the bar is in line with your ankle bones. From here, I think we can just get a little bit stronger hinge. So close off those ribs, send the butt back, reach that arm down. From here, I want you to think of swinging your elbow back behind you for that clean. One of the biggest mistakes that I see with cleans is that the elbow swings away from us rather than back. So a good drill for this is to clean catch. So I'm really reinforcing elbow back and down, elbow back and down. So that when we get into that full clean, elbow back. This is something I actually always work on. Make sure we're not dumping forward, right? So elbow back again. Keep the bell close to you. Honestly, that's the only thing I would improve upon. And once again, this is not like a, oh my God, please stop, you're gonna hurt yourself. These are little tiny technical fixes. So great job. Okay, this was a lot longer video than I thought, but I feel like we got to get into like the nitty gritty because we only had 7 people. Let me know if you want me to do this again. I feel like now that you like know the drill, you might feel better about submitting stuff, or maybe it terrified you even more. Let me know. Honestly, one of the things that I love is like being able to interact with this little community that I've built, whether it's in the Fit Club, whether it is here on YouTube. And my biggest why at the end of the day is to like help and educate you all. So that's why I want to do this. And I'd love to know how you feel about it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos. And I will see you all in the next one.